Welcome to the Football Historian Podcast.
By all means, enjoy it.
He will go right to the very top.
Dos, tres, cuatro times.
Here we go, Germans.
I will turn these results round.
All right, that's good manners.
There's animosity, but there's no fight.
If you can't beat them, join them.
How do you make me feel sick if I look at you?
No, I want to fight here. Don't drink, don't sleep with women, don't drive fast cars.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit too!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Football Historian Podcast. Today we are joined by Ian Byrne MP. Thank you very much for joining us, Ian. Some people might think, why have you got a politician on a football podcast? We are going to get on to that later. But the first thing I want to speak to you about is you grew up very close to where we record in Stockbridge Village. What was it like being a football fan and a youngster in this area?
Oh, it was great. We called the Council Farm then before they got renamed in its posh new name. It was great. You know, it was just a huge working class council estate with football at the heart of absolutely everything. Everything we did as soon as we woke up, it was football. It actually, in its prime, Council Farm, I think was the biggest junior football league in Europe. So it was massive. You know, it was every waking minute you were trying to get in teams and play football, and then we play every single night in the Black Angus pub now, which is gone. And it was just a fantastic grounding, and it was also my introduction to women's football, because the finest footballer in Council Farm at our age was Karen Berg, a girl who lived right just behind me, and she was absolutely magnificent. Karen went on to play for England, and I often say the story when we're talking about it. I think we were age 6 or 7, and I played for I think it was the under-8s then. I was decent. My dad always thought I would have done far better than what I did. You know, the highlight of my career was the Elm House, I think. But anyway, Karen, I always never forget her, standing on the touchline, same age as us, best player in the biggest league in Europe, and she couldn't play football because of the rules were then. Obviously, there was no mixed football. So Karen had to watch, and I remember her just standing there looking so forlorn, and we were all playing, and she knew she was better than all of us. But football was the absolutely epicentre of it, of our life, and my dad was a massive Copite. So it was Liverpool and amateur football from year dot.
Yeah, so I've got you lived quite a relatively normal life before you got into politics. I think you were a taxi driver and had some other roles as well. But what was life like for Ian Byrne before he got in the political field?
Yeah, it was just probably a normal life. You know, I left school at 16, got an apprenticeship, worked the metal box in Speke, which was fantastic because they had their own football pitch, and they used to let you get off on a Wednesday and play football against the factories. So I was a printer till I was 40. Then we were locked out of our factory by a rogue employer. We went on strike for 6 months. We couldn't keep the factory open, but that was sort of my introduction then into outside work, trade union movement, because the trade union movement working with us, United Union working with us to keep the factory open. But unfortunately, as I said, we didn't. 350 great jobs that were lost in Netherton, never to be replaced. So 40, you felt as though you were on the scrap heap. I was a printer, but the printing trade had sort of like died with regards to new technology. So what do? First time I go to job centre, and with the greatest respect to hot dog salesman, that was the job what I got offered. It was a hot dog salesman in Croxton Park on a Saturday. Now you've got 3 kids, you've got a mortgage, it ain't an appetising future job prospect. So I ended up, my mate just said to me, I had loads of mates who were cabbies, as everyone has in Liverpool. Just get at Acne and we'll get you some work. And I'd done that for 2 years. And you know what, Peter, it was probably the best thing I'd done with regards the development of my ability to speak in public. Because you'd work in the factory, you go into the cabs, and I always use this story when going to schools. Genuinely, it was the shittest cab driver that has ever been known to man. As all my mates to tell you, because I've got the worst sense of direction. So, and even just before it was the advent of, we had sat-nav and all that, but a lot of the people who get in your cabs think, you should know the knowledge, you shouldn't have a sat-nav. No, we had the knowledge in Liverpool was not the knowledge in London. So I passed the course because I knew the fella on it. And you have to think quick on your feet, because you've got a load of people in the back of your cab 2 o'clock in the morning, stay from Matthew Street, and you're not taking them the way home that you think you should go, well then you've got to be able to pacify a lot of drunken Scousers or Norwegians or whatever they used to pick up. So it was good. It got you the ability to think quick on your feet, talk, but also general public. Get out there, meet the general public, have them conversations. I loved it. I used to love working the footy games, even though I couldn't go for a pint after it. I used to love working before the games, the Everton games as well. Some brilliant laughs, conversations, stick we used to give each other with the Evertonians in the back of the cab, and it was a really good learning experience for me and them. 2014, touched on the trade union movement. They got in touch with me Unite and said, would you like to become work for us as a trade union organiser, which basically is going into factories and helping the employees to organise, because that's where your strength comes industrially, and that was the greatest job I'd ever had, and probably will have. Absolutely loved it. And that was working with Dave Kelly. We eventually formed Fans Supporting Foodbanks with, and it was a pleasure. And then fell into politics. Yeah,
well, we will touch on Fans Supporting Foodbanks later. It's something that I do want to talk about further. But you did a 6-year Open University degree, which is how you got into the political field. I think you did it around your taxi job as well, I've got here. So what were your family and friends like? Were they supportive, or were they a bit worried about a career change and a return to education?
No, it was all supportive, and that just came about because at 15, 16, at 12, we're being told by the teacher, you've got a chance at potentially, because I moved from Cantle Farm, we moved to Anfield, Breck Road, and the teacher said to me when I was 12, you potentially got an opportunity to go to university. It wasn't something we done, it just really wasn't something on our radar. And then when I was 15, a fella said, there's no chance, you go and get a job. So I went out and I got an apprenticeship with Metal Box, which was delighted, I wouldn't. But I always had a nag that, should have done something like that. And it's funny, all my mates all left school the same, got jobs. A lot of them have gone on to get degrees, but it was always after, it was something after. It just wasn't. It just wasn't a done thing then. It wasn't as popular then. I am getting on a bit in years, like so. Yeah, it was, and I worked within the schools. I asked to become like a trustee within the school that my kids went to, school governor, sorry, and the head teacher was fantastic, and she said to me, I thought I always wanted to love to go into teaching. So like I was mid-30s, kids were going to do school, and she said, well, why don't you consider it? Why don't you go to Open University? Maybe something you do. And I thought, you know what? It's got to be more than printing fish finger cartons, what I was doing at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I used to do it of nights, bringing the kids up. And then I just doubled the time. And anyway, at the end of the 6 years, I ended up getting a degree in history. And it's just mine now. But, it's something which I'll always treasure. It's something which I'm extremely proud of, and if anyone's listening, the Open University is one of the most fantastic things you can ever do. I'd love to go back and do it. When I retired from politics, I think I'd take another degree because it was something which I found very, very nourishing as spiritually, mentally. It was a fantastic thing to do, and as I said, I'm a massive advocate now for the Open University and adult education, because it's fantastic.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I actually I had to study politics in university, but only because I went to Liverpool Hope University. I wanted to be a history teacher, and the only way in was doing history with teaching at Hope Uni. I dropped the teaching after a week, so maybe it wasn't the best decision I've ever had, but you had to do politics with history for that first year, and if I'm completely honest with you, I hated it. All I really know is that if you're from Liverpool, you vote Labour, and in the politics stuff that we did, the only thing that me and my mate Tom actually enjoyed was looking at the football and the sports side of politics. So I just wondering, really, as someone who maybe doesn't understand, appreciate, or whatever about politics, in layman's terms, could you just describe to me and maybe to everyone else watching, what is politics? Why should people like me care more about it, and why is it so important?
Oh God, it's a good question, actually. Yeah, really good question. No, I think for me, politics is community. Politics starts in the ability to change people's lives be that in a scale within your local community, if you're protesting against something being built, or you want to try and enhance your local area with like a park, and you go and petition the council. Politics for me is rooted starts in communities. That's how I've always seen it. That's how I operate, and that's how my office operates. So it was never like a pathway I chose, never wanted to be. But if we're looking at it in the round, local politics is obviously in the UK. You've got, certainly in Liverpool, you've got your local councillors who then represent you within the city. Obviously, my job's nationally, so I've got 55,000 constituents who I represent, every single one of them, regardless of what political persuasion they are. That's my job. I mean, today we've been at the opening community consultation around Zoe's place. We were opening a new place in West Derby, and we had two fantastic friends, 51 years friendship. One was a big Labour supporter, one was a big Conservative supporter. Both my constituents, they've got their issues. So my job is to represent that, along with the hundreds of MPs who are split across the country. So the whole country's divided, obviously, into subsections called constituencies, and then you'll elect someone who then sent to the Houses of Parliament to hopefully give you a voice wherever you're from in that community and represent the interests of where you're from, which obviously I'm in this city, so football is a big player in them interests, both blue and red.
Well, I've actually done a few talks myself in schools, and that my partner's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, and I've been lucky enough to speak to primary school kids about writing. I've written 3 books, and I always try and say to kids, it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn a bit here, but if you think of someone who's written 3 books, I don't think they look like me, I don't think they sound like me. So I just wanted to ask you, really, is that something that you try and put across in your politics? Because I think maybe, and I think a lot of other people, if you think of a politician, it's a posh old bloke, and I'm not going to say you're posh, maybe the other two, but you're someone who has a strong accent and represents people from where I'm from, and obviously people from all different accents across the country will also look up to people in their local area. So how important is it to you to try and represent people and encourage people from this area which you grew up in to get into politics and to do it themselves?
Massively important to me. Absolutely massively important to me is that you've got somebody who come from Council Farm, grew up in the council estate, obviously went through life without any inclination to get into politics, but always been unbelievably political. Grew up through the militant era, seen what Thatcher did to our city, and then obviously Hillsborough politicises you. You see what happens, after Hillsborough, the state did what it did. We might touch on that. So always political, because to be fair, a lot of people are usually political in the city, aren't they, who aren't involved in politics. Liverpool is a very political city. So yeah, I think for me, going into the schools from this area, where I represent in West Derby, the kids see me, they hear me, and it's usually important to me that they can aspire to be exactly what you said. Absolutely should be extremely proud. An author at your age, come up from the area. It's a big thing, and the more role models we get who do jobs which other people may feel as though they shouldn't be in. When I in 2019, when I was standing in West Derby, there was lots of people who thought there's no way anybody with an accent like him should be representing us in Parliament. Now I think, and I've been told by other people who more of our mindset, that it is very important to wear accents in Parliament. If you've got 600 drones who are all from university educated, no background, no understanding of life, there's nothing better than getting up and listening to Ian Lavery. You can't understand the word he says, but my God, he is what he is. He's an ex-miner, from the coal fields in the northeast. He's lived them experiences, and unfortunately in politics that's dying out. And I think it's a massive error on politics. It leaves a deficit. People need to be able to go wherever you're from, see some sort of political representation, because otherwise avoid. And you said politics is boring. It's no. This is absolutely. If you look at elements of it, it will be boring. But boil politics down to what it is. This week, we were talking about, the football governance, the football regulator. I'm sure you'd be usually interested in the elements of that. We were debating hospice funding, so I'm in Zoe's place today. If they don't get sustainable funding from hospices, we won't have children's hospices. Politics on a day-to-day basis affects every single person's life in so many ways, and it's so important that we go into schools and let them know this, because if they don't engage politically, decisions are made for them, at them, not with them. They haven't got any influence on them. It's massively important that you're invested politically, because if you don't, you'll just get people who like posh upper middle class people like we've had in this country for too long, who make decisions which are absolutely catastrophic for us and certainly this city, and that's what we've seen over the decades. So for me, part of my job is to go in. Yeah, you can be an MP, yeah, you can get involved, but you must get involved. You must be invested, because you've got to be making decisions. And there's so many things coming down the line now. Environment, there's so many things which are going to affect people's lives. So it's such an important time to be involved in politics.
Well, that seems like a good place to leave it for part one. We're going to go to a quick advert break now, and we're going to come back and talk about more reasons why politics and football are so intertwined. But we'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the next section of the Football Historian podcast.
Sorry, Pete. I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Where'd you get that shirt from?
Oh, this Lazio number's just from Classic Football Shirts. Where'd you get yours from?
Thank you. Mine's from Classic Football Shirts as well.
Wow. Well, when I bought my shirt, I used the code TFH10 to get 10% off all orders. Did you use the same?
I did. I used a discount code. I think it was the same as yours.
Oh, TFH10. Oh, that's great, because if you want to get 10% off all your orders, you can use TFH10 at classicfootballshirts.com.
Unbelievable deal.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Football Historian podcast. We are still joined by Ian Byrne, MP. I want to talk now about Fans Supporting Foodbanks. So, I wrote a book about the players who played for both Liverpool and Everton, and the first thing I thought of was when we had the book launch was trying to find a charity or a cause that would bring both teams together, and that's actually quite difficult despite the fact we're in the same city. But with Fans Supporting Foodbanks, I was just wondering if you could explain to people what that is, how it came about, and basically just how hard it was to bring two football teams together through a common cause like Fans Supporting Foodbanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Oh, it's one of our proudest achievements. It was done from outside politics. We were both working for United Union, me and Dave, and we were involved in fan activism as well. So we were involved in the 20s Plenty campaign. I was Spirity Shankly, Dave was Blue Union, and we were going about and trying to encourage collaboration between football supporters to take on the vested interest of the Premier League, and that was hugely successful and still is now, because your £30 away tickets come from fan activism, because it come about obviously with the price of the tickets going into like £70-80. I think £70 the Arsenal tickets, which were the tipping point for us, the away tickets. So we'd work together on that, and then I ended up working for United, and me and Dave used to travel around, and then Fans Supporting Foodbanks came from we were meeting a community organiser in Anfield, just on Lower Breck Road, and we went to the centre, and it was a Wednesday afternoon, if I remember. There was a queue outside, and I knew a couple of people in the queue, so I'm sitting down with the lady in question we were meeting, and I just said, "It looks busy out there, the bingo," and she went, "Yes, the bingo's the food bank." And even though I actually live 10 minutes from the ground now, I was 10 minutes walk from that. He didn't realise that. I didn't see it. I hadn't seen it. That sort of like visual element of hunger and food poverty. And I say, no one people in the queue. So she said, well, come and see what we give out. And we went into the back room. And it was, because it was a food bank that was run on donations from the community. Obviously, the community was struggling. So it didn't have the greatest array of food. But it lived with me forever. The big massive bag of pasta and breaking it into little sweet bags, little we call £10 sweet bags, put the pasta in and giving it like a bag. It was, so it didn't half affect me. So we got home that night, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I hardly slept a wink, and we thought of, you'd seen the collaboration between the clubs and the supporters, and then you just thought, say we go to Anfield and we ask the fans to donate, and then Dave said, well, why don't we do both? You know, Liverpool and Everton, obviously the proximity, then we get a game a week. So that made sense, and that's where Fans Supporting Foodbanks come from. Then we said Hunger doesn't wear club colours, and we started Everton playing United, and we were at Goodison, and Robbie Daniels came, who was Dave's mate on the Blue Union, for the first collection. And from that, we'd met the council, Jane Corbett, who was a councillor. She gave us a couple of wheelie bins, and we put them, and we had like virtually no social media presence. But we got tons of chip papers in the bins, but we got a few tins. There's something in this, and that's how it started, and that's where it come from. And from that, then we developed it. We had links with the clubs anyway. I was on the supporters, the fans forum, I think it was called then. So we then worked with the football clubs. David had we'd had a relationship with Everton, obviously a long relationship with Everton. Dave Kelly had, obviously, was one of the drivers behind stopping them moving to Kirby, but they knew him. And, we sat down with the clubs. We were initially suspicious, I won't lie about that. And we said, no, it's a genuine thing. We just want to utilise the power of the supporters and see if we can educate them about food poverty and what's happening in the communities, but also bring in food. And that's where it come from. And from that, like-minded individuals from across towns, cities, football clubs, got involved with us, seeing what we were doing. We set up a social media presence, working with the trade unions, working with different faiths, and we just organically built up this network. And then it touched on, obviously, the collaboration between supporters. So we thought, well, if we bring food to the Fans Supporting Foodbanks in, say, Newcastle, it's a statement of working class solidarity. Know your real enemy is. It's not certainly anyone who speaks with an accent, a Geordie accent, Scouse accent, or Cockney accent. The people that are making you collect food outside the football ground because of the levels of poverty within your community. It's a political choice. It doesn't have to be that way. They're political choices. So, 2015, build it. And then 2018, 19, COVID it. And pre-COVID, I think over 35% of all food that was going into the food banks in the city was coming from football supporters. I think Newcastle certainly replicates that. And then we developed, obviously, working together, networks, then which grew into Scotland. So after COVID, Fans Supporting Foodbanks Scotland. And, think about some of the things. The first United Food Bank collection, the first fans that came with us, Liverpool supporters, Spirity Shankly, first donation. That's a statement. Then we had West Ham, Millwall collection taking place. They were working with each other, and previously when we'd done the 20 plenty stuff, some of these clubs wouldn't sit in the same rooms. They didn't realise that the collaboration was needed to obviously affect change. Then we get to 20 plenty, there's a realisation, but we still got that. You still had that sort of like divisive elements of it, which we try to utilise Fans Supporting Foodbanks if you educate them, maybe push back on Thatcherism and that all about me, and reignite people's community spirit and understanding of why we need a collective mindset. And Dave Kelly always, because we got criticised at first by some within the trade union movement because we shouldn't have done it, and Kelly had grown up collecting Jordan the Miners, and Dave rightly said, we feel as though it's more solidarity, not charity, and these people need our help. So we developed this network, and as I said, you've got Rangers and Celtic collecting together, unheard of. One of the people in Glasgow told us one of the first times they've ever worked together, two brave people, Rangers fan, Celtic fan, come together and made a statement which resonated across Scotland, Dundee United. So all the time, getting working class communities thinking, collaboration, working together, unity is strength, all these trade union elements, and that's what Fans Supporting Foodbanks is built on. And then we've moved into food pantries. We run 6 food pantries now across the city, which are like an open style market, destigmatising food poverty. They're not like a food bank. And we have artists on there, we have advice centres, and I think last year it was over 100,000 people actually were fed through the food pantries, and it creates an atmosphere of belonging as well. You know, you're a member, you pay £3.50, and interestingly, we had a survey done by John Moores University who worked with us, a fantastic lad called Jack Sugden and his team. And he worked with us for over 18 months at the Pantheon to become a volunteer. He's going to become a trustee. He loves the model. And some of the statistics and some of the data, what we got from that report, were phenomenal. You know, people actually enjoyed going, not because of a sense of belonging, community, which is what we try to encourage. Obviously, the emergency food element. But I think what's usually important, to your listeners, is that all this, what we've done, should not be necessary. I go back to political choices, and obviously then I have the ability in 2019 to go into the political arena and fight for the right to food, which is the eradication of food banks. But Fans Supporting Foodbanks has been a fantastic example of what can be done collaboratively, utilising football as a force for good. And, some of the stuff that we've done with the mosques, the World Cup showing in 2018 when we, in the Abdullah Quillen Mosque, and we invited the whole community to come in and watch a World Cup game, and many of them had never been in a mosque before. Suspicious. Went in through football. I think we had about 130 in the room, and it made a massive difference. And it was that utilisation, and now Liverpool Foundation and Everton are really good at utilising them elements and bringing it together. So, yeah, Fans Supporting Foodbanks has come a long way, and it's an organisation we're extremely proud. I was on Goodison last night, and we were collecting last night, and, it's a great crack as well, the stick that you get there, and certainly going to Derby last night. But yeah, we're proud of the links that we've made, both nationally, internationally, and then it also gives you a huge ability to mobilise football supporters against food poverty.
Yeah, so like an example I remember is the Leicester City fans started singing Feed the Scousers, and the reaction of Liverpool fans obviously during the game is singing like F the Tories and stuff like that. But I think it was a couple of years ago and Liverpool actually played Leicester away a few weeks later, and I've got here, Liverpool was one of the first teams to bring food to the community of Leicester a few weeks later, and actually instead of trying to fight back against people saying feed the Scousers and trying to make it out like people from the city are deprived or whatever, they actually went and helped the people who were living in poverty in their own city. So, that shows how important the food banks are and how great the work is that you've done. And obviously we've discussed it there, but I just want to move on to Hillsborough as well. Before we get involved into what you're doing now with Hillsborough and how far it's come since then, what was your involvement in that day and in that match as a supporter?
Yeah, I'm sure you've had 16-year-olds going the match. Obviously, been watching Liverpool for a long time, and getting the train down with me three mates. One was actually one of my first girlfriend, and she was with us. She was a season ticket holder before I met her, so we were all football nuts, and we went into I think it was Pen 3 before the game. We were there an hour and a half before because we'd been last year in '88 and it was bonkers. But obviously the decisions that were made by the police officer at the time meant that Hillsborough never happened, but it could have done. It was crazy in '88. I mean, that stadium was never ever fit for purpose for the FA Cup, as we know, and we knew at the time, and everyone knew that anyway. So we got there about, I think it was 2 hours early. We got the train, sun was shining, got in there. And just before he made the decision to open the gates, it was rammed, and Elaine said, I can't breathe, we need to get out. And it was the last thing you wanted to do because we were right behind a goal, we'd been there before, and but obviously we said, well, we left. So I said, okay, I'll have to go, and my two mates said, no, we're staying. I said, sound. I said, this is here after the game. And then as I'm getting off, I never forget, my mate Macca just turned around and he said, you know what, we come together, we go together. And if she wouldn't have been there, we were right behind the goal. So we just got out to the side, just as the decision was made to open the gates. So, I mean, you talk about luck, and it was only because Elaine was with us. And I think it was the first and last game that she'd come away with us. And then we seen it all unfold. When I knew my dad was in there, my dad's mates, all your friends, everyone was behind the goal, because that's where we all went. That's where we stood in the cop, and that's where we went. So we were extremely fortunate, but then watching it unfold and being so powerless, and seeing everything, the lack of police action, there's just absolute, just just decisions that were made on the day just made it so much worse and actually enacted it, which it could have been so different if a couple of decisions had been made like they should have done by the people in authority. So then that shapes you. You go home, got to say, my dad was in Aussie, seriously injured. My mum was going out to mine because there's no such thing as mobile phones then, was there? So we get into the train station, and then and then you're trying to deal with it as a 16-year-old, and then obviously for me, one of the pivotal moments was the Sun. It was the headline, which it nearly sent me off my head, because then you start blaming yourself. Then it was our fault, even though you'd seen it with your own eyes. The power of the media, then certainly the print media and that paper, and obviously the narrative which they got out from day one changed everyone's perception of Hillsborough. If he'd have stood up, and we can touch on the Hillsborough law. If he'd just stood up and told the truth, because he would have been obligated to, if Duckenfield would have said, I fucked up, it was my fault, on that night, well, imagine how different the story would have been. How many lives, mums, dads, sisters, brothers fighting for justice would have been different, because they would have had it, and we would have had that. So that's why obviously I'm so passionate in this role, both as from a Hillsborough perspective and the Real Tuesday Legacy Project. But just to finish, that then shapes your life completely. It shapes your life. From the police coming into my house to interview me, I was 16, and the first thing the police officer said from the West Midlands Police was, how much did you have to drink on the day? So, excuse me language, I said, get out the house. The fuck. It was one question he asked, and I told him to get out, because you knew the stitch up, what they were trying to do. My dad come down the stairs, and he volleyed them out as well. He said, get out. He said, don't ever come back. So, that's sort of like that politicising, because you're just seeing the injustice, and that seared on your soul. It never leaves you.
So we obviously spoken about how you remember the game as a supporter, but now you have a platform for making real change as a politician. I know from my partner's involvement in the Real Truth Legacy Project and the stuff that she's helped do with schools and stuff like that, but can you just explain to people watching, what is the Hillsborough Law, what is the Real Truth Legacy Project, like, what are the differences, and why are we still talking about Hillsborough today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for us now, obviously, to do the whole process of Hillsborough, and we got the truth, but we never got justice. And the two great legacies from Hillsborough, we feel as though we remain in the legal elements to the Hillsborough Law, and the education elements, and educating people what actually happened, because it was a national disaster. There were so many lessons to be learned from that whole process, which the country really haven't done. And that's why the tragedy chanting elements was so like galling, is because obviously people do know the truth now, but someone won't acknowledge it. And then it's 35 years ago this year, so why should kids know about Hillsborough? So I think it was really important to me to utilise this position as an MP, to try and emphasise, build on, and create something which helps to them two processes which have talked about, the education and the legal. So touch on the Hillsborough Law first. Obviously, Andy Burnham, Stevie Rotherham, Maria Eagle, other MPs, lots of MPs were involved in fighting for truth and justice. But in 2017, Andy Burnham got a piece of legislation based on Bishop James Jones's report, the patronising disposition of power, which Theresa May, the then Prime Minister, had asked them to create. So he reports back with this, lessons from Hillsborough. Andy then does a law around called the Hillsborough Law, which is basically trying to rebalance the scales of justice, so nobody would have to face what the Hillsborough families and survivors faced again. And then we see the whole litany, don't we, of state cover-ups, from contaminated blood scandal, which is obviously in the news now. We was in Parliament debating it on Tuesday. The post office scandal. These are all playbook Hillsborough cover-ups, Hillsborough style cover-up. So 2017, Andy puts that through with Steve. Unfortunately, we get a general election, so that falls. Andy and Steve then go out of Parliament. Then in 2019, to become Metro Mayors, and Mayors Liverpool and Manchester. I come in 2019 into Parliament, and then in 2021, Steve and Andy got in touch with me and said, would you consider, obviously, trying to get the Hillsborough law through again, because you're in Parliament now. So I said I'll be one of the greatest honours of my lives, because obviously a key part for me of surviving Hillsborough, of that luck, is where I am now. I've got that opportunity. So very proudly I took on the Hillsborough Law campaign group in Parliament. We set up an all-parliamentary group called the Public Accountability, which is about getting the Hillsborough Law onto the statute book. And we've had great success working with fantastic groups who've suffered injustice, and parents and people. It's been really, really educating for me, and been really, really upsetting, to be honest, seeing how ruthless the state can be in doing what it's done, even though we've lived through it through Hillsborough, just never ending. And no, I'm delighted to say that we've got a full commitment from the Labour Party, who, if the polls are to be are correct, that'll be the next Labour, be the next government. Full commitment from Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, who said on a number of occasions, said it again last week, that the Hillsborough Law will be implemented in entirety. And the two key elements for people who don't know much about it are public advocate elements of it. So we'll have like a Hillsborough independent panel set up for any sort of disaster, which Maria Eagle's been pushing, and that's a part of the Hillsborough Law. The ability for parity of arms. So from a Hillsborough perspective, I always liken it to, we were going in fighting the legal system. It's like going in to fight Tyson Fury with your hands tied behind your back and blindfolded. That was the unevenness of the justice. So parity of arms. So any sort of disaster, the state, whoever's taking the state on, has the same ability to do legal aid, to have the same level of expertise. Because Hillsborough families had to crowdfund for one barrister against the whole phalanx of the army, and also, hugely importantly, any public official who gets on a stand in an inquest or any sort of investigation has to tell the truth, because they don't at the moment as it stands now. So your police officers, like they did during Hillsborough, go on during the inquests, during everything that we tried to do with regards hearings to pull together the truth, and lied, and there was no sanctions to be faced. So just imagine what that would do to transform the fairness and equality in this country if that law was implemented, and how would that rebalance the scales of justice, so anybody, regardless of their income, could then become could get justice. And that's really important to me, obviously from a Hillsborough perspective. And the Real Truth Legacy Project is something that we started in 2021, and it was basically building on what we've seen education-wise across. Teachers were doing it in all different ways, and we just thought if we could bring something together but get it on the national curriculum, because that's the key part of Real Truth Legacy Project, is to put Hillsborough on the national curriculum. And then we constructed with fantastic educators like your partner, put all the lessons together. Professor Phil Scraton and his partner Deborah proof checked it. And we worked with families and survivors. We had a group which you is part of, and just pulling it all together, working for 18 months, creating something with Liverpool City Council that then become the Real Truth Legacy Project, which was basically an assembly and a toolkit for teachers to teach on Hillsborough. We trialled that a few times in different schools, been massively successful. And then working with Liverpool Foundation, we've now put it on in Anfield as well. So I went to meet the education secretary, and he basically said, well, you go and take it away. You trial it, get it going in Liverpool City region, and then we'll look at it from a national curriculum perspective. So we put motions through the City Council. We got all the Liverpool City region to agree to it. Steve Rodden was great on it as well. And then politically, we moved into that arena where we got all the schools then to obviously get the Real Truth Legacy Project, push it to all the schools. But now we've got Liverpool as well, and we'll have Everton as well, I think, in June, working with us as well. They want to come on board. So we've created this critical mass now of families, supporters, survivors. We've got the toolkit. It's been passed. We haven't had one voice of dissension really about the content, which is testimony to, obviously, Hillsborough's a very emotive subject, so we've involved anybody that wants to be involved can be involved in it, which is really important to me. So it's been a really inclusive operation, pulling it together, and now basically we say to schools, it's there, you can download it, start obviously teaching it. And we had a number of schools last month, teacher got in contacted, took the toolkit, taught it. It's been given by the leads across the Liverpool City Region Education, so it's gone to all the schools. So now it's a case, it's there. Let's get it out there. Working with examination boards, AQA, they put it on their website. So slowly but surely, we're working towards getting it right out across the country. And then obviously for me, the aim is whatever government comes next, well, we've now got an absolute ready-made example of what this looks like. And for me, it's now a case of obviously getting that into legislation and getting it into the national curriculum, and that's key part. So the two parts what I touched on, education, rebalancing the scales of justice, we're playing a part and hopefully getting there.
Well, that's it. As you said before, you were 16 when Hillsborough happened. It was 35 years ago. So if we think of younger fans going the game today, a 16-year-old, why would they know what happened 35 years ago if it's not in education, if they're not being taught it? You see like full fan bases at Anfield most weeks singing "The Sun Was Right, murderers, always the victims," and they just need that education. And by the things that you're doing, it's very important. Why wouldn't a 16-year-old think that?
No, absolutely. And just on that, very good point what you make. And I remember the Forest fans were ruthless a couple of years back, and the Hillsborough Support Survivors Association, Peace and people like that brought the Forest fans across. And when they were done like a ceremony at Anfield, and I spoke to one of the, so it was the main lad behind the Forest fans, his son, he was 14, and he said, Ian, I sing Always the Victims, and I thought Always the Victim was like Jurgen Klopp coming on Match of the Day, moaning about penalty decisions or decisions against Liverpool. Well, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? 35 years is a bloody long time. So yeah, it's about education. But for me, a key part of it as well is future-proofing communities about what the state is actually capable of. And as I said, post office scandal, contaminated blood, the list is endless. Hillsborough, Grenfell, so be ready that if you get an injustice foisted on you that happens to you, because they will happen again. Disasters are going to happen again. And the state's there and it's culpable, well, the state will do its damnedest to avoid the truth, and the state will do its damnedest to demonise you like they did with us, and unfortunately that's happened time and time again. So be ready. You won't readily get truth, and you won't readily get justice. You've got to bloody fight for it.
That way, you should be proud for all the work that you do, and as we spoke about before, the Hillsborough Law and the Real Truth Legacy Project, the two very important things, and I'm sure the families of the Hillsborough survivors and those who passed away will all be very happy with what's happening. But that seems like a good place to leave this section. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll come back. We're going to talk a bit more about football in part 3. Are you looking for a Kazakhstani football team to support? Then I think FC Kemay is the team you should support. Do you agree?
Growing up as a child, I always had FC Kemay posters on my bedroom wall.
Well, and all the children of the Kazakhstani future will have FC Kemay posters on their wall, because FC Kemay is the team to support, and because of that, Tom has made us a chant that we're all going to follow. So,
up the Kemay, up the Kemay,
up the Kemay. Make sure you follow them on all the social medias. All the posts and all the things you should follow will appear below us right here. And you should be a supporter of FC Kemay.
Live, laugh, Kemay.
Welcome back to the Football Historian podcast. We're still joined by Ian Byrne, and we're now going to talk about, ironically, football history. So I'd just like to know, really, what was your first match that you went to?
Oh, God, I don't know. That's a very good question. I remember going with our fella when I was about 7, 6 I was, and it was in any road then when it was obviously terraced, and I remember him sticking me on the bar and just seeing a green pitch of Anfield, and it was a white kit, and I've said to him who was it, and he thinks it was Leeds. Well, he's not 100% certain, and I was just like, I'm just in awe of like the red and the white kits and the cop and the stadium and the lights. It was a night game, and for then it was just like absolutely in love. So that would have been, I think it was 77. So it was 5. And then my first game, what I can remember vividly, away from Anfield was Wembley. I think it was 79. We beat Arsenal in the FA Cup, and that was a baptism of fire because that was with the Ty Barn pub from Cancel Farm, my dad's footy team, in an old tranny van. So it was like 6, 7 years of age with all these horrible fellas in the back all drinking brown miles in the tranny van. So, but no, it was one of my great memories going to the Arsenal. So, yeah, so I was 5. Yeah, I think it was just after 5 years of age, and he thinks it was Leeds.
So did you used to go to match often then?
So we were lucky really because Canny Farm to Anfield seemed like half a world away. So we didn't really, it was only when he'd take us then, but then we moved down to Anfield, Breck Road, Everton Road, when I was 9, and that then changed everything because you could go then. So we were walking, you get in last 15. So we go down Anfield when we were 9, and we'd all wait outside. As soon as 75 minutes was on, you'd all pile into the Kop with all your mates and cost nothing, obviously. So then you started like becoming like a regular match goer for the last 15 minutes. And then when you get like 10, 9, 10, 10, 11, yeah, fella then I give you the few bob and you go and queue up to get into the, you got the Kop then, and that obviously standing with your mates who used to stand at the back to begin with. So we got a bit braver to go into the middle, and then it just became the focal point of your life because every single mate went. But well, 99% either Liverpool or Everton. So you could just afford it then, couldn't you? You could just walk up and go. So it then become a huge part of obviously your week because it was all about looking forward to the match then on a Saturday.
So next question is, what is the greatest game you've ever seen?
Istanbul. Yeah, I know people thought, but just Istanbul, yeah, because it was always my ambition, like every Liverpool, like every football fan, to go to European Cup final. You were brought up on the history, and I didn't have the chance to go. Even I never went to ISIL. My dad went, I didn't go. So to get that chance with that team was just absolutely magnificent, and the day that never leave me.
Okay, well, so you started going to match in the 70s. Obviously, your favourite game there is Istanbul. We've seen how great the Liverpool team has been in recent years as well. But what I want to ask you is, what is the best era in Liverpool history, in your opinion?
Oh, no, it's really good, yeah, because obviously we went right through, the 80s bands coming, and, I love the 80s anyway, the 80s team, the success. We were like 10, 11, 12, you're travelling, you're watching Liverpool, the 86 team, and then obviously Dalglish rebuilds, Barnes, Beasley era, Steve McMahon, who was at one of your book launches, I love that era. And then obviously we go into a bit of decline, but you should enjoy watching Evans' team, some good teams there. But Ulier's era was fantastic as well, bringing back that sustained success and having the treble. Proper, yeah, it was a great achievement. Yeah, it was a great achievement. And going to all of them, going to a lot of European Cup games, 2001, going to Rome, seeing us beating Rome. But obviously we're in the Klopp era now, so many brilliant moments going to see Bayern Munich away, and I love the Rafa era. I love Benitez, yeah. I love, some of the great times we had there. Obviously we touched on Istanbul, but Rafa nearly built one of the great teams, and just seeing Gerrard and Torres and and in between Alonso and just that team and Carragher, and I think that for me, the Ulier era was magnificent. I loved it, but I've just got a real soft spot for Rafa's time, tenure, not just Istanbul, but obviously going back to Athens, and we should have won that final. That was potentially was on Benitez, but that was a great era. And then we had a great fight back from the fans against Dix and Gillette. So that was a very vested era, wasn't it? And yeah, so yeah. But
okay, great. I'm going to give you a bit of a mean one now, and I apologise, but Who are the greatest 5 players in Liverpool's history?
Oh God, no, that's your historian head on now, isn't it? Yeah, they have. Yeah, that's a really good one. That I'm going to put I'm going to put Dalglish. Just in the 5. Barnes, Stevie Gerrard, Suarez, and Mo Salah. If we go in order, oh God. If we go in order, I'm going to say Dalglish. I've just argued with me lads, and you know, I'd have to go for Dalglish for longevity and what he achieved. But and Barnes second. But Suarez was the greatest talent I've ever seen in my life on a football pitch. I've seen him do things which I didn't think were possible. I've seen him do things like the Norwich game, the hat-trick. You know, I mean, but I've seen Barnes do things like that. But Suarez was just, he had something magical and mysterious, didn't he? Because he was just like, but I'm going to go for Dalglish, I'm going to go for Barnes, I'm going to go for Stevie Gerrard, I go for Mo Salah, and then I put Suarez in 5th, because he didn't win. He wasn't out there that long, didn't win. But if it's talking talent, and why I say that, and I back this up, my granddad, who was, I think he was in his 90s when he died, he went from year dot, and he was avid, a bit like you, historian. He we could reel off. He said he was the greatest ever player, Suarez, talent he'd ever seen. And he reeled, he's seen little, he's seen everyone right through, and he said Suarez was the greatest natural talent, and I think that's an argument which will rage for a long time.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, with Luis Suarez? You can't question that he was arguably as talented as any player Liverpool have ever had, and also when you look at what he did at Barcelona, shining nearly as brightly as Lionel Messi, his talent really is amazing. But if we can go off topic of Liverpool a little bit, and if I ask for the 5 best non-Liverpool players that you have ever seen.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? That's a good one. Yeah. No, well, tell you what, we do it live, so it's got, because otherwise you can just talk about, Pelé and Maradona, never seen Maradona. If you see live, seen Messi a few times, Ronaldinho, amazing, wasn't he? Amazing footballer. And then if you look at home, I love Bergkamp. I used to love watching Dennis Bergkamp. Thierry Henry was outstanding, but then I'm going to have to tip a nod to United as well. You're going to have to, and I loved, I love Keane, you love Scholes. I thought they were the heartbeat of that team. I used to love watching Jaap Stam as well. So yeah, I think there's been some magnificent players what I've seen, I've been lucky enough to see, but well, I'll never leave you with Messi. And I'll tell you a story. When he scored that free kick at Barcelona, when he trunked us in 2019, we were right behind that. And it was one of the, as soon as he stood up, he bent it. And it's one of the greatest free kicks I've ever seen. It was absolute genius. And we played well that day. We didn't deserve that. So, when we come home, I felt so guilty that I said to me 2 lads, I said, you know what? I said, I'd got a spare. And I said, you know what? I said to Jamie, you can have my ticket because I just want you to say that you've seen Messi. So you can always say to your kids, your grandkids, that I see Messi at Anfield and give them the ticket for the semi-final. So I went to church with my daughter and watched it. I watched like the greatest game ever unfold before your eyes. And emotions probably not really. We don't go around hugging each other in our family. But he come through the door at the end of it and hugged me. I can't thank you for giving me a ticket. And I felt like strangling it. But no, I made up. Even though I'm gutted to miss that game, I made up that obviously they'd seen Messi, but I think that was immaterial now. They will remember Messi, will they? They'll remember Andy Robinson booting him, but they remember the game overtook Messi, didn't they? But you can still say they've seen him.
Well, what a game it was as well. And if it makes you feel any better, I was actually at that match as well. But we won't go into that. We'll talk more about your opinions in a second. We're going to go to a break before we have our famous final section, which is the debate. So we'll have a quick advert break, and then let's settle some of the biggest debates in football history.
Hi, I'm Warren, the producer for the Football Historian podcast, and we're here today to talk to you about the Patreon subscription.
Yes, so for just £1 a month for the first 100 people, there's a lot of benefits that you get, and I think £1 is a terrific deal.
Pittance,
yes, £1 only, and you get early access, which means at least 24 hours before everyone else gets the episode, you get to watch it. There's also an extra section, we call it the Football Historian podcast Extra Time, and we ask all the questions to the guests that no one else gets to see unless you're a patron. And on top of that, you're the ones who get to ask the questions. You send them in, we tell you which guest is going to be coming and sitting in this chair. You ask them, we record it, you get to watch it. No one else does. On top of that, we do a monthly special. We did one last night. It was a quiz. You were there.
Yeah, bedlam and great content.
Yeah, so hopefully you can watch that. As I said, we've got a round on Linvoy Primus or Lionel Messi. We've done mastermind stuff, all that. That's going to happen every month. The bigger this grows, we're going to do it even more regularly. Hopefully it'll be once a week. But we need your support. So to do that, £1 a month for the first 100 people. Your early support will be rewarded. From then on, it's £3 a month if you want to support us. If you want to pay £5 a month, you get all that we've just mentioned, but you get a poster. Warren will sign it, I'll sign it, all the lads. We'll get a few of the guests to do it as well. We'll send that out to you. And then for £10 a month, you get all that, the poster, all the early access, and you get a free copy of any of my books. So I've done one on Billy Liddell, Crossing the Park, Tommy Lawrence. They're all worth at least £20. For just £10, you get a copy of the book, all the stuff we've already mentioned. We'd really appreciate your support. We cannot do this without you.
This really is a passion project, and anything people can put into it goes straight back into it. We don't take a wage. We're doing this for free. We're doing this because we enjoy what we do.
That's it. It all makes the content better. And I say from just £1 a month, you can make our dreams come true. Thanks for the support. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
The debate.
Welcome back to the final section of the Football Historian podcast. We like to call this section the debate, as we are going to settle some of the biggest debates in football history. First debate, which is one that I don't think you're going to take too much time thinking about, but who was the greatest player? And I'll also ask for a second and third as well. But who was the greatest out of Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard and Paul Scholes?
It's not even a debate, is it? Scholes seconds, Lampard third. Gerrard was one of the greatest, wasn't he? Scholes was a fine player. Lampard was a fine player as well, but that was different gravy. That's not for debate. Any sensible football fan, regardless of where they're from, who they support, would have him in that order.
No, I agree, and I think the polls that we have up on the screen, they're gonna very much show that Steven Gerrard's winning, but that probably is largely down to the fact that I'm about to ask Liverpool fans at the moment, but hopefully as this podcast grows that'll change a bit. So the next debate I would like you to settle is Pele or Maradona.
Maradona. I loved him. I love him now. I'm obsessed with him. I've got books about him. I mean, what a magnificent player, and what a magnificent life, for right and wrong reasons. And to think he was such a magnificent player with his lifestyle that he led, you can only wonder if he was a bit like Milner, what he would have achieved. What would he have done? Would he have been the same? Would he? I don't know. But he's just somebody who I think transcends football, doesn't he? And such a fascinating, unbelievably complex character. But I watched it the other day again. When he does that warm up for Napoli, when life is life. And it's just mesmeric, isn't it? You're just looking at somebody who's just a total master. But no, for me, if I could go back in a time machine, I'd love to go and watch him play for Napoli in his pomp.
Well, yeah, and add on that he's getting booted by everyone and playing on those terrible pitches at the time.
Booted them, yeah. So, and obviously that's with my sons, because we have this argument all the time, because they think Messi because of the longevity and the goals and what he's won. But I just said, imagine Maradona had been brought up in this era with a professional attitude. My word, what would he achieve?
Well, go on then. Seeing as you said you've read up on him so much and have such adoration for Maradona, what do you think his greatest achievement is? It's probably winning the league with Napoli.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it was, considering how good the teams were then and who he was playing against. It was the greatest league in the world, probably one of the greatest league that's ever been, hasn't he? For caliber and a player. I'm not knocking '86 because that World Cup was one of my favourites ever. I mean, his goal against England was just one of the greatest ever. Anyone that looks at it from a parochial fashion wants the bumps test him, because the greatest goal probably on an international. Well, John Barnes might have a word to say. Oh, yeah. But no, I'm going to go with the Napoli one, because obviously they'd been starved of success. They didn't have a litany of world-class players. They had a smattering of world-class players, but he was against some of the greatest players that ever lived, and he dominated it, and he done what he had to do. So, no, for me, yeah.
Well, another topic that we need to settle, which I think is quite easy, and a lot of other people seem to, but we have to ask it. Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo?
I mean, I love Ronaldo. I think he's someone who's absolutely maximised every element of his game, and the way he's changed his body, and he's absolutely drained every drip out of himself to maximise what he's become, and he's become an absolutely world-class footballer. But again, Messi's got a little touch of Maradona about him, hasn't he? With just that innate absolute brilliance, and obviously his physique. He's not like Ronaldo. He had issues, didn't he, growing up with his size, and he's just become an absolute master of football, and I absolutely love watching him. So I'd have to say all day long, I don't even think that's a debate. Messi Maradona's a debate. Messi Ronaldo's not.
A tough one for you, maybe a bit tougher than some of the previous ones. So who do you think is the greatest team of all time? So I don't need over like one game, and it can be like a few years period. It could be a World Cup team, it could be whatever. But who is the greatest team to ever play football?
Brazil 1970. I just think again, growing up and in Canny Farm, and football wasn't much on the telly, and you were fed this picture of that team, and growing up and then seeing it, and I think that shaped football. That team, I think it was probably one of the most influential and iconic football teams that ever were, and the stars in it and the players that were in it. So for me, and that's speaking as a Liverpool fan as well, I just think that team, and I always had a soft spot for Netherlands. 74, 78 with Cruyff as well. So many great players as well. But I think it's the kits. I'm looking at your lovely kits here. You're obsessed by kits, aren't you? And it was the colour, wasn't it? The bright yellow of Brazil, the orange of Holland, and they always loved Germany as well. West Germany, as they were called then. I loved them as well. So, and because football wasn't on the telly then, it just had such a mystique. The World Cup took your life over. It was just such an event, because obviously that was football on a everyday basis, wasn't it, with all these players, all these teams, and all this exoticness, because you've seen great players in the English league, but he was not an exotic, was he, as such. So yeah, it was yeah.
Okay, sorry. If we go back to the Messi-Ronaldo debate we had, if they are the greatest players of the last 15, 20 years, who do you think is the third best behind both of them?
Oh, it's a good one. I'd probably say, oh God, I probably would say Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, R9, as he's known. Someone says Fat Ronaldo. Ronaldo in his pomp before he had the injuries was a force of nature. Someone who I used to love watching, but again, you look at Zidane as well, don't you? I love watching Zidane, so graceful, such a player. But I think I'd have to say, and again, a good debate there is Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, because I remember watching Ronaldinho when he destroyed Chelsea for Barcelona. My God, what a footballer. So yeah, I'm going to go for the R9.
Well, I've got another one that was actually sent in here to us, which I think is a bit more of an interesting one. Who was the greatest goalkeeper out of Buffon, Casillas and Neuer?
Oh, it's good. It's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good question. I'll go for. I think Buffon. I love Buffon. Great goalkeeper. Neuer, game-changing goalkeeper, and Casillas third.
Well, that officially ends the debate and the podcast. But before we say goodbye to you, Ian, and thank you very much again for coming, you've spoke about some very important things, and obviously you're a politician. how can people who are watching, how can they get in touch? How can they follow what you're doing? And what's the best ways to reach you?
Yeah, so if you go on the match, Fans Supporting Foodbanks, stop a tin off. We've got a couple of games left before the end of the season. Come over and have a chat. It's always good to have a chat. And then obviously you've been a great supporter of that. If you want to see anything that we've spoken about, just go on the new website, www.ianbyrne.com. .org. I'm getting told, sorry for that, don't go on it that often. And also you see you can download the Real Truth Legacy project, which I must say I'd like to thank Annie on record for the work that she's done, your partner, on that. And that's there, downloadable. So we've got any teachers listening who think, you know what, I'd like to know a bit more about that, go on it. And support that. But anything you can do to support the projects that we run, from the Real Truth Legacy project to the Right to Food to the Hillsborough Law, greatly received. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll put all the links on the screen of how everyone can get in touch and can follow what you're doing. But I say, yeah, thanks again for joining us. Thank you for watching the Football Historian podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.